So, taking a break from Nothing Gained But Glory, I managed to pick up a copy of Washington's War in sort of a combination set. Given that I've started looking at some of the CDGs, I thought that this particular one might be interesting. I had been under the mistaken impression that I had played We the People. I'm beginning to think that I hadn't before. I know I played Hannibal, and I think I stayed away from We the People because of my dislike for the style. Washington's War is basically a retooling of We the People. The designer Mark Herman managed to get rid of what I found kind of an annoying aspect over in Hannibal, and I know was carried over into We the People, the combat cards. That made solo play particularly difficult, or would have. So anyway, this is a absolute first impression, I think. I'm not positive. And I'm not going to give a lot of details about rules and this, that, and the other. It's just one of my normal during action reports. There'll be more videos than you're used to someone doing, probably. And let me just give a feel for my impressions at this point before I start playing. This is the initial setup. Beyond, I've also placed, there's some optional unit, or not optional, but some units you have choice in placing. So the American player, or the Dirty Rebel player, gets one political control marker in each colony, in addition to whatever was forced set up. Of course, there's no room in Rhode Island for another one, so he only gets 12 additional ones. And the British player then gets 2 to place anywhere. Now, the first thing, and this is definitely explicit in the design, is the game is very much based on concepts in Go. I'm not sure how much placements fit it, but sort of the idea that if a piece is surrounded by enemy pieces, at the end of the turn it's destroyed. It goes away. You want to maintain areas that you do not have a control flag in, that are adjacent to you. And here we have an American piece that's cut off as well. You want to maintain liberties, as it were. Now, the English have sort of free ones, which are going off the map. If they're at a port, it's free for them. And the Americans do too. Well, it's really this. And both also can trace to a military unit, which is kind of a more standardized situation. But if you have no troops in play in an area, you can't maintain control of it unless there's an empty space. Now, for me, the realism of that, Herman tries to make some sort of argument about areas coalescing more towards one fixed idea. I just don't buy that. It's a game mechanism to me, and one that might be interesting, but I don't see any historical reason to really believe that a fairly decent sized area, like let's take this away, this area without the Continental Congress is more vulnerable than sort of spread out pockets of and not to military conquest, just to changing its view in and of itself. It's more vulnerable than small pockets are, because small pockets have to be surrounded individually. I just don't believe that. I think that areas that would provide each other mutual support, and I might actually consider tweaking with this game if I like it enough. It looks like a very, very light treatment of the subject. The closest thing I can relate it to is the old Milton Bradley skirmish. And the other things that I kind of will compare it to is some other CDGs, although it's clearly the lightest of the military area control type ones that I've seen. It's probably a little lighter than Twilight Struggle, which is maybe the next one up that I have. The deck is, well, one thing, the cards are loose and easy to shuffle in terms of easy to bend, but they're so slick that they fly all over the place when I try to do them. I know, I pick on the weirdest things to note or complain about. Another iffy thing, and other people have noted this, of course, is misprint on the control markers. They're not back printed correctly. A few of them are. It's not that big a deal. You keep track of things over here. You can use coins. You can use other means of doing so. They're not really that key to the play, but it's a shame. You can also use these suckers, which is probably what I will do. Alright, so where was I? I don't remember. Oh yeah. So it's going to be kind of hard to compare it to many other CDGs. I'll kind of maybe try to think about it in comparison to Wilderness War, but I'm not that comfortable with Wilderness War. I've only played it in opposed play, and that's not a way for me to understand a game. But in terms of revolutionary games, I want to compare it mostly to Skirmish and 1776, because it sits between them. Now, it's nothing like 1776, which is a hex encounter game with a decent amount of detail, except that unlike Skirmish, and I think unlike, I've only played this a couple of times, a long time ago, 13 Colonies in Revolt, which was put out by TSR's S&T. Unlike those, this relies almost exclusively on what you control. So, there's automatic victory, which is wiping the other guy off the map. Canada doesn't really count, but as it shouldn't. But if you can wipe the other guy's military forces off the map, you win. Okay, that just shouldn't happen, I think. We'll see. I might be able to manage it because I'm probably going to do some really dumb things. But the other option is... I wonder what these dashed lines are. Guess I'll have to look. Oh, I guess because they can't make a straight line between them comfortably, and that's all. No, this is curved. Huh. Guess I'll have to look that up. So the other option is the game will end. Not necessarily in the 1783 turn. It will end when Lord North's government falls. And that's an event in the deck. Actually, it's a number of event cards in the deck. And if one shows up, it can be superseded by another one. So you never really know when the game is going to end. But when it does end, you count victory by how many colonies you own. And a colony is just a colony. Rhode Island counts the same as New York. Reasonable or not, I don't care. The Brits have to hold 6. They win if they hold 6. The Americans win if they hold 7. 7 and 6 is 13. That doesn't seem right. Well, colonies can be uncontrolled. The American win is superseded by the British win. If the British hold 6, they win. If the Americans hold 7 and the British don't hold 6, the Americans win. I don't know what happens if neither holds enough. Probably I look in the rules. The combat cards themselves, or the strategy cards themselves, are a little different from a lot of they're a little different from a lot of the CDGs I've seen so far. Events and opportunity and operations points aren't combined on one card. Cards are either operations cards or events cards. I don't know what that's going to have as an effect on play. Event cards, except in the case of a small handful, the Government Falls and a couple of other key events, are sort of optional. You can discard them either in battle or otherwise for slight advantages. Now, if you discard them otherwise, your opponent can pick them up at a cost. And then he's got them in his hand and can use them. If you discard them during battle, that can't be done. Got a little track as events happen. The French might come in. Combat is an opposed die roll, but there's some little bits to it, and I'll hit that as we hit it. It's not too exciting. The biggie is that the amount of points that a leader brings into a battle is limited to their strategic or tactical ability or whatever it is. But it could only be half that, and it's also limited by the number of troops that you have. So the amount of value that a leader brings is somewhat more random. I have another number of other modifiers in there. The Brits have advantages either along the coast because of the Navy, or until they lose a major battle. And that's not a term in this game, but it's a term from a lot of other games. Until they lose a major battle, they lose 3 or more combat strength points in a fight, and that can include surrendering. They end up with a +1 bonus because of their regulars being very feared or whatever. Got a sort of a sequence of play. Nice player aid. I haven't looked at how valuable it is in terms of, once I start playing, I'll see more. But it's got a lot of the information for the game. I think most of what you need to refer to is going to be on here. So, go through the different steps. The reinforcement phase. This is, the Brits get a fixed number of reinforcements each turn, and that goes into their box, and the Americans do not. Also, any captured leaders go back into the boxes at this point, except for Washington, because if he's captured, they torture him and kill him or something. Then we go to the strategy cards phase. Well, this is the dealing phase. Strategy phase, you actually play out the cards at this point, just like you would in any other CDG. Winter attrition. This is kind of interesting. The Americans suffer attrition anywhere. They lose half their forces anywhere, unless they're stacked with Washington, in which case, he gives them his Washington Lee goodness, or they're a stack of just French regulars, in which case they follow British attrition rules. British attrition rules say, I gotta be someplace comfy and warm for the winter. And that's the only thing that matters. Now, comfy and warm means not a circle. Squares are comfy and warm, and fortresses are comfy and warm, or whatever the hell they are. What are they called? Fortified ports. Yeah. Okay. There's gotta be some special rule about them. Yeah, there is. Okay. So, the winter attrition phase, you lose half your units if you suffer attrition. And this makes sense. The English needed to find comfortable quarters for the winter. They don't have to worry about that below the winter attrition line, and that's why you don't see any squares down here, because they wouldn't mean anything. You do see a fortified port, though. The Americans, on the other hand, wanted to go back to their farms. They lived in this area. They didn't want to abandon their families, etc., for too long. The British didn't have much choice for the most part. In battle also, there's militia, for which controlling the colony gives you an extra +1 in battle. So there is a reason beyond trying to win to have control of colonies. So abandoning them early has its cost. French naval phase, you get to move the French fleet around. And the French fleet basically denies the British a number of their advantages that they get in relation to ports. Basically, they're able to just swoop down and take a port with a campaign card, or they get supply from ports. I don't think it cuts that. They can bring reinforcements into ports, stuff like that. Political control phase, this is where the isolation takes place. Surrounded, counters fall, and I think this is when control of colonies is assessed. And then the end phase, whatever. So yeah, that's kind of an overview of what's going on. I'm not sure what the strategy really is, because the weird control aspects, the fact that control of the colonies is really of minor importance, probably for the first half of the game. It's not going to indicate that you keep control. I don't know how valuable it is towards keeping control. But certainly it seems like a good thing to have a lot of political control markers, at least for the British, who can keep big hunks of them. The Americans, a big hunk of control markers may be a problem. I think the Americans are going to want to stay away from the coastal areas because they're just too easy to lose. And I don't know what else to say. So I guess I'll hang this one up and I'll jump into the plane.